What happens when Prince Harry, carrying the legacy of Princess Diana, faces off with Billy Crystal, whose jokes cut deeper than a knife? This was the moment when truth triumphed over cynicism in front of millions. Harry, a man fighting for his truth, bearing the pain of losing a mother who became a symbol of compassion for an entire generation. Crystal, America's beloved comedian, whose voice in When Harry Met Sally and witty monologues at the Oscars remain etched in the hearts of those over 55. What began as a friendly interview about charity turned into a battle for family respect that shook America. Watch until the end and share your thoughts in the comments. Did Crystal go too far? The crystal clear talk show studio sparkled with modern elegance. Neon accents on the walls and massive screens with dynamic visuals created a trendy Hollywood vibe. But the soft lighting and glossy black desk evoked classic 90s talk shows, the era when Billy Crystal was at the peak of his fame. The audience, mostly older folks, buzzed with anticipation. They held signs reading, "We love Harry" and "Diana's legacy lives," but tension hung in the air as if everyone knew tonight would be special. Prince Harry entered the studio to thunderous applause. His navy suit fit perfectly, but his eyes betrayed anxiety. He gave a nervous smile, waving to the crowd, and took a seat across from Billy Crystal. The host, dressed in a classic black tuxedo with a vibrant tie, looked like he was in his prime, with that same mischievous grin that charmed America in city slickers. But his eyes gleamed with cunning as he flipped through his notes on the desk. Backstage, the tension was even thicker. Harry's publicist, a young woman in a sharp suit, darted around the producers. "We agreed, no questions about Diana or the royal family," she insisted, her voice trembling with urgency. One producer, a man with gray hair, merely shrugged. "It's Billy Crystal. He does what he wants." The publicist glanced at Harry, who sat in the green room before a mirror, clutching a glass of water. His fingers trembled slightly. Meanwhile, Billy leaned back in his chair backstage, sipping coffee. His assistant, a young guy in headphones, asked, "Are you sure you want to touch the royal stuff? It could spark a scandal." Crystal just smiled, his eyes narrowing. "Scandal? Kid, I live for this. America wants the truth, and I'll give them a show." When the show went live, the studio erupted in applause. Billy strode onto the stage with his signature energy, waving his arms like a conductor. "Welcome to Crystal Clear, where we slice through the truth like a hot knife through butter," he exclaimed, drawing laughter from the audience. He introduced Harry with a hint of irony. "Our guest, a man who traded a palace for California's palm trees, Prince Harry." The audience clapped again, but some exchanged glances. Everyone knew Crystal wouldn't stick to compliments. Harry sat down, his posture rigid, his fingers nervously gripping the armrests. Billy started with easy questions as promised to the producers. "Harry, tell us about your charity work. The Invictus Games. That's incredible, right?" Harry relaxed, his voice warming. "It's my passion, Billy. Helping veterans find strength. That's what inspires me every day." The audience applauded, and for a moment, it seemed the evening would go smoothly. But Crystal wouldn't be Crystal without throwing a jab. He leaned forward, his smile sharpening. "You know, Harry, charity's great. But what's it like, swapping royal life for a Hollywood throne? Pretty sweet deal, huh?" The audience chuckled, but the laughter was uneasy. Harry forced a smile, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I'm just living my life, Billy," he replied, trying to stay calm. But his voice carried a hint of strain, and Crystal noticed. Crystal leaned back in his chair, holding his pen like a weapon. His tone stayed playful, but his words grew sharper. "Harry, you wrote a book, Spare, made Netflix series. Is that all part of your charity, or maybe a new way to be king of headlines?" The audience gasped. Some laughed, but the laughter faded quickly. All eyes were on Harry. The prince clenched his fists, his jaw tightening, but he responded with restraint, his voice quiet yet firm. "I honor my mother's memory, Billy. Everything I do is about carrying on her work, her compassion." His words drew approving applause, especially from women in the front row who remembered Diana, her smile, her embraces with the sick, her fight for those the world ignored. But Crystal didn't back down. His smile turned icy, his eyes flashing with cynicism. "Oh, Harry, your fans love your truth. But doesn't it feel like you're selling family secrets your mother, Diana, kept private? She didn't run to talk shows to spill everything, did she?" The audience fell silent. Crystal's jokes were no longer jokes. They were turning into insults. A woman in the third row, tears in her eyes, whispered to her neighbor, "This is too much. He has no right to mention Diana." Harry felt anger rising in his throat. His fingers gripped the armrests tighter, but he forced himself to breathe deeply. A memory flashed in his mind. A child, clinging to his mother's hand as she led him through a swarm of photographers, her voice, gentle yet firm. "Harry, hold your head high, no matter what they say." He looked at Crystal, his eyes blazing with pain. "Billy, you don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice trembling but controlled. "My mother fought for truth, but she did it with love. I'm trying to do the same." The audience erupted in applause, but Crystal merely raised an eyebrow. "Love, you say? Then why isn't your family back at the palace clapping along with us? Why do they call your book a stab in the back?" His words landed like a slap. Harry's heart pounded. He wanted to respond, but the words caught in his throat. Headlines flooded his mind. "Harry betrays the Queen. Palace scandal." And the voices of critics labeling his book "Trading in Pain." Sensing Harry's vulnerability, Crystal leaned closer. "Let's be honest, Harry. You say it's about Diana's legacy. But doesn't it seem like you're just trading on her name to stay in the spotlight? Netflix pays, cameras roll, and you tell the world how hard it is to be a prince." The audience gasped again, but this time their eyes held sympathy for Harry. A man in the back, wearing a faded jacket, muttered, "That's unfair." The guy lost his mom. Harry felt his patience slipping. His eyes filled with pain, but he held himself together. "You don't know what I've been through, Billy," he said, his voice quiet but carrying strength. "I lost my mother when I was 12. I've lived under cameras my whole life. I write my truth not for headlines, but to help people feeling the same pain." His words were raw, and the audience felt it. Women in the front row nodded, recalling Diana's charity, her own battles with the media. But Crystal didn't stop. His smile vanished, his voice turning cold. "Harry, you call it truth. But doesn't it feel like you're betraying your family, trading their pain for fame? Diana didn't air her troubles to the world. She just did her work." The audience froze. This was the moment the line was crossed. The crystal-clear studio sank into tense silence. Neon lights reflected off the glossy desk, but the atmosphere turned cold, as if someone had snuffed out the 90s warmth Billy Crystal so masterfully conjured. His final words, "Diana didn't air her troubles to the world. She just did her work," hung in the air like a challenge. The audience, laughing at his jokes just minutes ago, now sat still. Women in the front row, clutching signs for Harry, gripped them tighter, their eyes glistening with tears. A man in the back, in a faded denim jacket, muttered, "This isn't funny anymore." Prince Harry sat across from Crystal, his face taut, his eyes burning with a mix of pain and anger. His fingers, still gripping the chair's armrests, were white with strain. His heart raced, the host's words echoing in his mind. "Betraying your family, trading in pain, betraying Diana." These accusations weren't new. He'd heard them in tabloid headlines, ex-comments, critics' whispers. But hearing them here, live, from a man America loved for his humor, felt like a blow to the heart. Harry recalled a childhood moment. 12 years old, standing in a dark palace hallway, hearing his mother, Princess Diana, softly cry behind closed doors. She didn't know he was there, but her pain pierced him like a cold wind. He vowed then to protect her, even if the world stood against him. Now, under the blinding studio lights, he felt that same duty, not for himself, but for her memory. Sensing the tension, Crystal leaned forward, his smile thinning, almost predatory. "Harry, don't go quiet. America wants your answer. You say it's about truth, but why isn't your family standing by you? Why are the Queen, Your father, your brother, all silent. His voice was soft, but his words cut like a scalpel. The audience gasped. Someone whispered, "He's gone too far." Harry looked up, his eyes locking with Crystal's. "Billy," he began, his voice low but steely. "You don't know what it's like to live in a palace where every word is weighed, every mistake torn apart. I'm not silent because I'm tired of hiding. I tell my stories so people who feel alone know they're not." His words were raw, and the audience felt it. A middle-aged woman in the third row, who remembered Diana on magazine covers, sniffled, squeezing her neighbor's hand. But Crystal didn't relent. He leaned back, his brows shooting up in mock surprise. "Oh, Harry, that's touching, but let's get real. You wrote Spare, spilled the beans on fights with your brother, palace drama. Do you think your mother would have approved of airing family dirt on Netflix? She was a lady, not a reality star." His words stung like a slap, and the studio buzzed with whispers. Security near the stage exchanged glances, sensing the situation spiraling. Harry felt anger surging, hot and unstoppable. His eyes brimmed with tears, but he refused to let them fall. He thought of Diana, her smile as she hugged patients in hospitals, her soft voice saying, "Harry, be kind, even when it hurts." Those memories gave him strength. "You have no right to judge my mother," he said, his voice trembling but firm. "She fought for those the world ignored, and I'm doing the same, even if it means standing alone." The audience roared with applause, but Crystal just smiled, his eyes glinting with cynicism. "Alone, you say? Then why's the world saying you betrayed your family for fame? You call it Diana's legacy, but doesn't it feel like you're trading her name to stay trending?" His words were venomous, and the studio froze. Even the producers backstage, watching the monitors, held their breath. Crystal delivered the final blow, his voice cold and sharp. "Harry, let's drop the illusions. You call it Diana's legacy, but aren't you betraying your family and her memory, trading their pain for Netflix deals?" The words fell like a stone into water, and the studio sank into oppressive silence. The audience, who remembered Diana as a symbol of compassion, felt their hearts tighten. A woman in the front row, with gray hair and a butterfly brooch, covered her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. Harry shot to his feet, his face blazing with anger. His hands shook as he grabbed the microphone clipped to his collar and tore it off his shirt. The wire hit the floor with a loud thud, ringing like a gunshot. "You mock my pain and my mother," he shouted, his voice quaking with rage and despair. "You don't know what loss is. You don't know what it's like to walk behind your mother's coffin while the world watches and you can't even cry." His words were an explosion, and the studio froze. Even Crystal, always ready with a quip, lost his comedic spark. His smile vanished, his eyes widening in shock. Harry took a step toward the exit, his chest heaving. Security rushed toward the stage, but he raised a hand, halting them. He turned back to Crystal, his voice dropping to a quiet, forceful whisper. "I live to carry on her work, Billy. Not your ratings, not headlines. Her work." His words were the final straw, and the audience erupted in applause, swelling like a wave. Women in the front row stood, followed by others. The man in the denim jacket shouted, "Bravo, Harry!" Crystal sat motionless, his face pale. His hand, still holding the pen, fell to the desk. He tried to smile, but it looked forced. "Well, that was emotional," he said, attempting to regain control, but his voice wavered. The audience didn't respond. The silence after the applause was deafening. Harry turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed loudly in the studio, each one resounding with his pain and resolve. Backstage, his publicist rushed to him, her face panicked. "Harry, we can fix this," she said, but he shook his head. "Nothing to fix," he replied softly. "I said what I needed to." As Harry left the studio, the doors closed quietly behind him, but the moment had already become legend. His words about Diana spread across America faster than lightning. On the X platform, the hashtag #HarryDefends. Diana trended #1 within minutes. A post from @Nostalgia52 read, "Billy Crystal just got schooled by a prince. Diana would be proud." Another, from @SilverScreenFan, added, "This wasn't a show. It was a heartbreaking on our screens." Harry. The next morning, newspapers exploded with headlines. Crystal versus Harry. The battle that shocked America. Prince defends Diana's legacy. Did Billy Crystal go too far? TV channels replayed the clip of Harry ripping off his mic. His words, "You don't know what loss is," going viral. Viewers, especially those over 55, remembered Diana, her charity, her own media struggles. A woman from Texas watching the rerun wrote to CNN, "I cried with Harry. He reminded me why we loved his mother." Crystal Clear's ratings plummeted. Viewers who once adored Crystal's humor felt he'd crossed a line. X posts criticized him. "Billy was cruel. Harry's just a man who lost his mom," wrote at Golden Age TV. Crystal tried to recover, issuing a statement. "My jokes were part of the show. I respect Harry and his work." But his words drowned in the outrage. This moment showed that respect for family and loved ones' memory triumphs over cynicism, even in a world of loud headlines. Harry returned to California, continuing his work with the Invictus Games, but his words stayed with America. His pain, his truth, his love for Diana resonated with those who remembered the princess and valued family. Was Harry right to defend Diana's memory? Did Crystal go too far? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories like this.